All right, so we got some big news this morning that Tesla has added Bitcoin to their balance sheet, and I think that this may be the day that people look back at and see as the turning point. Maybe, maybe not. But the whole point here being is that number one, it caused Bitcoin to hit an all-time high. In fact, it peaked at about 57,000 Canadian. I think it was about 44 American. It is back down to about 52, or sorry, 55 Canadian. The old all-time high I think was about 52, 53. So it went literally like $4,000 higher than it ever has, mainly off this news, right? Mainly off this news. But the point I wanted to make, I mean, there's several points I think, but the first thing that I would throw out is, again, I'm no financial advisor or any of that kind of stuff when it comes to where I think this will end up. Again, obviously this is just my opinion, but I have been following Bitcoin very close for a good time now, but even closer over the last few months. And I think, like I said, I think this may be the breaking point, for the simple reason being that we now have a major, well-known um, corporation company that has Bitcoin on their balance sheet. We also, I mean, MicroStrategy is, I mean, they're not nearly as well known, but they have over $1 billion in Bitcoin as well, I think. Tesla, I think they added about 1.5 billion to, and this is just a one-time thing. You never know; they may add more. And that MicroStrategy did that. I think they've added, even a second or a third time already. So the point I'm trying to make here too is that as far as the people who are Bitcoin bears, the people that don't like Bitcoin, I mean, they tend to fall in two camps, I think, in that I mean, sometimes there's some overlap. Most people they simply don't understand. They don't understand why people want Bitcoin. And again, those kind of people can be broken into separate camps as well, and that the people that are really ignorant, or the people that have briefly heard people that really don't know what they're talking about give their opinions on Bitcoin, right? And they know it's going to crash, right? It's going to crash, or any of this kind of stuff, right? Not to mention too, they talk to their, the guy at the bank or something along those lines. And again, the first thing people need to bring up, you need to understand when it comes to Bitcoin too, is that for the people saying, oh, Bitcoin's a bubble, Bitcoin's going to crash, all of this kind of stuff, I don't understand how people take those people seriously, like the Peter Schiff of those kind of people. And again, I like Peter Schiff on pretty much everything other than Bitcoin. I mean, I've kind of stopped paying attention to him just because of that, because he's so obviously wrong on the issue, but he refuses to admit it. And this is the problem with a lot of these kind of people, is that they're never going to. I mean, same thing goes when it comes to pretty much everything else in politics, right? Like, or anything political. And Bitcoin isn't necessarily political. In fact, it's everything but I guess it's just kind of a human psychology thing. And that, again, people just really do not like admitting they're wrong, right? They really do not like it. So again, the reason why this is so important is that the one, again, there's the two people that don't like Bitcoin. There's the people that they just don't understand it, whether it's because they've been lied to about it or they're genuinely oblivious to it, right? And then there's the people that say, oh, the government's going to ban it. Maybe they're they're kind of neutral when it comes to Bitcoin, but they're, oh, the government's going to ban it or the government's going to regulate it. Well, there's several big problems with that. And that it wouldn't surprise me if some governments did it, but when it comes to the US government, I don't see it happening. And there's another really important things that you have to bring up too, is that for the government to ban Bitcoin, it's going to have to keep going up, because up until this point, there's never been any calls for the government to ban or regulate Bitcoin any more than it already is. So again, if you think the government's going to ban or regulate Bitcoin, well, what you're saying is that it's going to go up a lot more in value, right? It's going to go up a lot more. So that's something that I would bring up. But the other thing too, when it comes to Bitcoin too, is that the government's not going to regulate it if a lot of these big companies have money into it, right? Because, like it or not, again, I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on, the government doesn't really care about everyday people, right? They really don't. So the thing being is that the more of these big companies that have money in Bitcoin, the less likely the government is to regulate it, because these government figures know that their reelection is dependent upon pleasing these big companies, right? Pleasing the billionaires, right? Like, for all we know, Elon Musk probably has personal money in Bitcoin as well, right? In fact, I would probably bet money on it. It's just a matter of how much. Um, so again, the main point here being is that the more companies that buy Bitcoin, the less likely the government is to regulate it, because the more companies that have it, the more pressure there will be on the government to not regulate it, because the more a proposed law or regulation stands to hurt these companies and these rich people, the less likely it is to go through, right? So, like I said, this is a very good sign, because you have one of the largest companies in the U.S. That now has it on their balance sheet, right? So again, it's a very good sign for the people that own Bitcoin. And I think it's going to be a very good sign going forward. And again, personally, like I've said before, over the next 10 years, I think Bitcoin easily beats the market, right? I think it easily beats the market. I think it's within the next 1 to 2 years that it's in the hundreds of thousands, and probably within the next 10, I could see it as soon as maybe 5 that it gets into the millions, right? And a lot of people think that that would be crazy, but if you look at Bitcoin, like, after halvings, like, I mean, there was the one in when was it, like 2013, 2012. There's the one in 2017, and then there was just one in back in May. After those halvings is always when it makes the biggest gains, right? Like, it was pretty much flat for like 2018, 2019. It didn't even off the start of 2020. It didn't do anything. Like, it was flat for 2 years, pretty much. It traded sideways. But yet this year it's up, whatever it's up, 500% or whatever. I mean, it's up a lot. Like, I think it bottomed out at about, I think it was like just under 10,000 Canadian, so probably 6 American or so. Right now we're up over 40,000 American, and we're up over 50,000 Canadian. It's very good to see. And the other thing I wanted to bring up too, for all the people that want to stick it to the rich people, and the banks, and if you're big on like the Wall Street bets, GameStop thing, if you were big on that, you should be buying cryptocurrencies, because what happens when you buy cryptocurrencies, that's money that the banks aren't going to get their hands on, right? And not to mention too, these bankers, these are some of the richest people in the world, right? These are some of the most richest, most powerful people in the world. Not to mention too, a lot of them are corrupt people. Like, look at the amount of money that the big banks, especially in the states, have paid in fines over the last, even because of 2008, right? Like, a lot of them were in the, I think it was insane amounts of money. Like, just look it up. Um, so again, if you really want to stick it to the man, then you would be buying Bitcoin, right? You would really be buying Bitcoin. And again, not just Bitcoin, like, diversify a little bit. There's Ethereum's the next biggest, and then there's, whatever the third biggest one is, depending on the day. Um, but again, the thing when it comes to Bitcoin too is that I think that this may be the turning point. It really might be. Like, seriously, like, what happened? Like, this is the thing too. Like, what happens if Tesla out now takes it a step further and allows Bitcoin in exchange for payments of their cars? Like, man, that would even be a even bigger turning point, right? Like, that would be an even bigger turning point, I think. So again, at the end of the day, this is very good news for anybody invested in Bitcoin, I think. And again, it's only a matter of time until more of this kind of stuff happens, right? And again, as the price comes up, more and more companies, more and more people are going to recognize it and say, yeah, I got to get in this game, right? I got to get in this game. So again, like, and not to mention too, the one thing that would concern me a little bit about Bitcoin is that if it does go to a million, you're going to hear a lot of calls for people saying, "Oh, it was unfair. We got to tax this and all this kind of stuff." Which again, it may happen. I mean, I could see Canada doing some stuff. Again, the problem with that being too is that, like, anybody who understands this knows, is that if the government tries to regulate Bitcoin too much, someone could just you could just leave the country. If you have $1 million, if you have $10 million in Bitcoin, you could just up and leave, and there's nothing the government could do to stop you, right? Because all you need is your seed phrase, and you can use that Bitcoin wherever you want, right? You can recover it, you can use it wherever you want. So this is the other thing for people that think that the government's going to regulate Bitcoin that they don't understand is that if the government regulates Bitcoin too much, you're going to do more harm than good. It's the same thing that happens in these Californias of the world that they raise taxes too much and people just leave. This is the thing when it comes to this too, is that there is a breaking point to where if you regulate things too much, that it starts to do more harm than good. Anybody that knows how the tax system works also knows too that when you there is a equilibrium to where if you were to raise taxes anymore, the amount of actual tax revenue wouldn't go up, right? There is an equilibrium, right? So again, this is something people need to understand too, is that if the government regulates Bitcoin, it may do more harm than good, right? So that's another thing people need to understand. And not to mention too, I think the main reason too is that people have been saying Bitcoin's a bubble for 10 years now, like the Peter Schiffs of the world. And the thing you need to ask these people is that you simply need to ask them is, okay, well, at what point do you admit you're wrong? At what point do you admit you're wrong? And if they don't give you a straight answer, which most of them won't, I wouldn't trust a word they say, right? Peter Schiff's argument is, oh, inflating a bubble even more isn't going to fix it, right? Which again, like if it was actually a bubble, then why would it? We're 10 years into this. I mean, Bitcoin was created in 2009, I think, but it started to get it didn't get popular until like 2016, 2017, and even more now. But it's been around for over 10 years now. Like if it was a bubble, then it would have popped by now, right? Um, and not to mention too, like the majority of Bitcoin in existence, I believe, is in hard storage, meaning it's people that aren't going to sell no matter what happens, right? So the chances of Bitcoin going to zero is pretty much non-existent, at least from what I can tell, right? In that, again, like for Bitcoin to go down significantly, people need to be willing to sell. The problem is that most people aren't willing to sell. And the main reason why it went down like in January was simply because, it was hitting new all-time highs, and the mainstream, some mainstream media outlets published some articles about, oh, you could lose everything, it's so risky, and then a bunch of people sold, right? And I think that what was really going on there is a lot of those people just wanted to get in for themselves, right? And it's very funny that like a couple weeks, 2 3 weeks later, it hits all new all-time highs again, right? It's funny how that works. So at the end of the day, again, I'm warning people now. I'm saying this right now is that if you're not invested in this at least a little bit, I'm not saying you put all your money in it or even a significant amount, but in my opinion, I would say, 10 to 20% is a good amount. Now, again, that's aggressive for a lot of people. That's not aggressive for other people, but, most financial advisors would probably say like 1 to 5%. Even if it is 1%, that's still better than nothing, right? And that 1% I think will perform better than all the rest of your investments, at least in the long run, right? Um, so again, what you want to do is completely up to you, but I'm simply saying that when Bitcoin's $1 million and you're complaining that, oh, it's so unfair that I didn't get into it, well, just remember there were people that were warning you. And again, for the people that have got in, well, awesome, good for you. You made the right decision, I believe. So um, anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. Again, I would very much appreciate whatever support I can get. But like I said, at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.